Many of us have a deep compassion for animals, often going to great lengths to assist those in need, even if they aren't our own. Whether it's stopping to rescue a lost dog on the road or leaving out food for hungry creatures, our good intentions toward animals are evident. However, despite our best efforts, sometimes our well-meaning actions can lead to unexpected consequences. In early 2019, 3 Estonian construction workers named Rando Kortsep, Robin Sillamäe, and Erkki Vali experienced an unusual and eventful day while working on repairs at the Sindi Dam in Estonia. Their day took an unexpected turn when they heard distressing sound and decided to investigate. Approaching the Pärnu River's bank, they noticed an animal about 100 yards away, desperately splashing in the water. As they observed the situation, it became clear that this was no ordinary animal. It was a dog in grave danger. The icy river was taking a toll on the poor dog, and it seemed unlikely it could survive much longer in those freezing waters. Without hesitation, the 3 men courageously jumped into the river and swam toward the struggling animal. Although the ice posed a significant challenge, their combined efforts allowed them to create a path and rescue the dog from its perilous situation. Once on the riverbank, they wrapped the shivering dog in a heavy blanket. It was only then that they had the opportunity to examine the dog more closely. It was a striking animal larger than the average house pet, with thick fur and piercing yellow eyes, a truly unique appearance. Recognizing the urgent need for medical attention, the workers didn't waste any time admiring the dog's unusual features. The blanket alone couldn't provide the warmth needed to prevent hypothermia, so they decided to take the dog to their pickup truck and immediately called the local animal hospital. As the truck sped toward the hospital, the dog remained remarkably calm, almost sleeping the entire way. It nestled its head on Kortsep's lap, showing a surprising level of affection, even in its distressed state. Upon arriving at the hospital, veterinarians rushed to attend to the dog's needs. However, they soon encountered a perplexing challenge. They couldn't determine the animal's true identity. Puzzled and seeking answers, they enlisted the help of a local hunter who was familiar with wildlife. To everyone's astonishment, the hunter revealed the startling truth. This was not a dog at all. It was a wolf. The construction workers were in disbelief. Not only had they misidentified the animal, but they had also transported a live wolf in their vehicle without any proper precautions. Fortunately, the wolf's initial docility was due to its sedation from the icy water, and it had not posed a threat during the rescue. As the wolf recovered, it began displaying typical behavior for a 1-year-old wolf in a confined space, prompting concerns for both its safety and the hospital staff's well-being. Consequently, the wolf was placed in a secure cage. By the end of the day, the wolf had fully recuperated, and the clinic was confident it could be safely reintroduced into the wild. However, to ensure its monitored well-being, Estonia's National Environmental Agency decided to fit the wolf with a GPS collar. This unexpected encounter with a wolf served as a vivid reminder that our efforts to help animals, while well-intentioned, can sometimes lead to extraordinary and unforeseen circumstances. When the time came to release the wolf, it wasted no time darting back into the wilderness, disappearing from sight. Kortsep and his companions waved farewell, marking the bittersweet conclusion to an unforgettable day of labor. We are elated with the outcome of this story and express our gratitude to all involved, particularly these brave men who rescued the wolf and the dedicated doctors at the clinic who fearlessly cared for the wild animal, stated the Estonian Union for the Protection of Animals in response to the incident. Surprisingly, such occurrences aren't uncommon in Estonia, where a substantial portion of Europe's wolf population resides. Indeed, just a few months prior to this incident, the wolf had been designated as Estonia's national animal. In a remarkable turn of events, this specific wolf was spotted in the wild just a month after its encounter with the construction workers. Remarkably, it was photographed more than 70 miles away from the release point, a testament to its successful return to its natural habitat. Although distinguishing a wolf from a dog might seem impossible, people frequently make such animal identification errors. Those unaware of the differences may inadvertently bring these doppelgangers home as pets. For instance, One morning, while dropping his children off at school, Justine Hansen observed a tiny creature scurrying across a snow-covered road. Intrigued, he pulled over to investigate. Understanding the peril small animals face on busy roads, Justine, with impressive agility and speed, safely retrieved the creature. He identified it as a hamster and, given his own daughter's ownership of one, felt a sense of responsibility to find its owner. He stashed the hamster in his glove compartment while contemplating the best course of action. Aware of his limited resources, Justine sought assistance and reached out to a Norwegian newspaper, Tromsø. The newspaper's assignment editors passed the story to Sanna Dragset-Borstad, who, while initially skeptical, agreed to meet Justine and his rescued hamster. Accompanied by the hamster, the two journeyed to a pet store affiliated with Animal Protection Norway, an organization dedicated to the welfare of animals. With 9,000 people working for the organization, they had the best chance of locating the hamster's original home. The pet store employee carefully examined the hamster, observing its brown, black, and blonde fur. To their surprise, she informed Justine and Sanna that it was not a hamster at all. What Justine had chased down in the snowy Norwegian road was not a pet. It was, in fact, a Norway lemming, indigenous to Norway. These furry creatures bear a striking resemblance to beloved pets, but there was a catch. Contrary to their portrayal in the popular video game series Lemmings, these critters are intelligent, skilled burrowers, and they tend to migrate when their homes become overcrowded. They thrive in nature, regardless of the weather. Back at the pet store, Justine knew he needed to return the lemming to its natural habitat. So, he and Sanna retraced their steps to the road where he had rescued the lemming and set it free in the snow, allowing it to embrace its natural life, not confined to a wheel. On a gloomy day, the duo released the lemming, bidding her farewell as she embarked on her journey back home. Laughter filled the air, for they had unknowingly become part of the world's most peculiar case of mistaken identity. Sanna, while not receiving a Pulitzer for the story, ended the day with a smile. She had covered a story that she, along with everyone involved, would never forget. As for Justine, while some criticized the eager father for his actions, after all, he had picked up a wild animal while it was simply minding its own business. The pet store worker took the side of the well-intentioned rescuer. He did the right thing, the worker affirmed. He saw an animal he thought needed help, and, to be fair, that lemming did bear a striking resemblance to a hamster. In fact, Justine's decision to assist an animal he believed was in distress was far nobler than the alternative, standing by while an animal suffers, assuming everything is fine. A similar lesson was learned by Jim Passmore of Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Jim's usual haunt was Hickey Creek, a park frequented by nature enthusiasts who admired its abundant pecan trees. One day, while waiting for his Yorkies to finish their business, Jim noticed something out of the ordinary. A peculiar mass floated on the creek's surface, disrupting its normally serene appearance. It appeared sizable, brown, and vaguely reminiscent of an animal. Squinting for a clearer view, Jim initially thought it might be a log, but uncertainty lingered. Moving closer to the shore, Jim stepped off the trail onto the muddy grass, hoping to satisfy his curiosity. Suddenly, with a start, he realized that the thing wasn't an inanimate object at all. It was covered in brown hair, and it was alive. Jim felt fortunate to witness a wild creature in its natural habitat, piquing his interest even further. The unknown animal exhibited slight movements, perhaps gently stirring in its slumber or reacting to a dream. Meanwhile, his dog began to growl and snarl. The closer Jim approached the animal, the more agitated his tiny pups became, as if they sensed an impending danger. Nevertheless, Jim grew increasingly concerned for the creature's feeble movements. It appeared desperate and trapped. Given the wooded, muddy creek bank location and the initial assumption that it was a beaver, Jim came across a clue that hinted at a sinister situation. A carrier, the type used to transport pets to the vet, along with an abandoned soiled blanket and a heavy-weighted chain concealed beneath it. As Jim contemplated the scene, it became evident that someone had discarded the carrier. Judging by the disarray, The dirty blanket, the chain, and the damaged cage. It appeared that a cruel individual had heartlessly abandoned a defenseless creature in the wild. Jim concluded that someone intended to harm the animal, but it had managed to escape. As understanding dawned on him, a rustling in the woods caught his attention, revealing another beaver emerging from the undergrowth. Jim saw this as a sign. Unafraid of human contact, the beaver moved into the open. Jim watched in fascination as it traversed the ground and approached the mysterious creature. Thinking he had correctly identified the mystery animal as a beaver, Jim interpreted this second beaver's arrival as a positive omen. Trusting his instincts, he cautiously approached the second beaver, closing the remaining distance to the creature in distress. However, as he neared, the other animal, trapped in the muddy suction of the water, stirred weakly. Side by side, Jim realized that he had made an incorrect assumption. The creature was far too large to be a beaver, unless it was a colossal, radioactive one. All along, the creature in distress had been a large, fluffy dog. Concealed under muck and grime was a beautiful collie. Relieved that he had taken the initiative to investigate further, Jim stepped into the creek, determined to rescue the dog. Safety was paramount, as any contact with the distressed dog could agitate it further. To address this, Jim had a brilliant idea. He covered the dog's head with a dark sweatshirt, blocking out all vision and light. This simple act seemed to soothe the anxious creature. Now that the dog was calmed, they needed to free it from the mud. However, it appeared stuck as though it were glued in place. Several able-bodied individuals struggled to extract the helpless creature, but it refused to budge. After a tense game of tug-of-war, the dog was finally released. Jim removed the covering and wiped away the mud to reveal the dog's face. The dog appeared thankful yet understandably terrified. There was no way to determine how long the poor creature had struggled to free itself from the mud after its owner had heartlessly abandoned it. One thing was certain. The handsome dog appeared to be in perfect health. Jim, a lifelong dog lover, was incensed. He couldn't fathom how anyone could mistreat an animal, let alone their own pet. He promptly contacted the police, and officers swiftly arrived at the scene. Finally, the frightened pet had advocates, and they were determined to ensure its safety. Upon conducting a more thorough examination, the police began to unravel the heartbreaking truth behind the dog's ordeal. It became clear that the sweet creature had been confined within an animal carrier, desperately attempting to bite its way to freedom when it was callously abandoned on the street. At some point during this heart-wrenching journey, the cage had been struck by a car, sending it tumbling into the forest until it ultimately landed on the muddy bank of the creek. Through an extraordinary stroke of luck, the dog survived this nightmarish ordeal, emerging mostly physically unscathed, but undoubtedly bearing deep emotional scars. If it hadn't been for Jim's fortuitous encounter with the beaver, one could only wonder if the poor dog would have ever managed to escape the mire. However, the appearance of this magical beaver left a perplexing question in its wake. Was the beaver intentionally signaling the presence of a fellow creature in distress, or was it merely an astonishing coincidence? Nevertheless, there was little time for contemplation. Law enforcement officers soon realized that the dog was in no condition to walk out of the paddock. They needed to transport the sizable dog, affectionately dubbed Teddy due to his resemblance to a stuffed animal, to a veterinarian for a thorough examination. Teddy, exhausted from his struggle in the mud, appeared to be quite overweight, possibly with underlying injuries that impeded his ability to walk on a leash. Fortunately, fate intervened once again, as the rescuers discovered a wheelbarrow nearby. Wrapped in a warm blanket, Teddy was carefully placed in the wheelbarrow and gently wheeled out of the paddock. Jim promptly made a call to the Oklahoma Alliance for Animals, and within minutes, arrangements were made to provide Teddy with the care and attention he so desperately needed. In many ways, Teddy had narrowly escaped yet another brush with peril, finding a place with the Oya afforded him the opportunity for rehabilitation. His fearful demeanor and justified lack of trust in humans might have led to a bleak outcome had he been taken to a traditional shelter. Furthermore, Teddy had bitten one of his rescuers, a regrettable circumstance that often leads to the euthanization of animals. However, the rescue group refused to give up on his future. Concerned that his aggression might be a symptom of rabies, they conducted tests to rule out the disease. The results came back clear. Teddy was free of rabies. Nonetheless, he had a long road ahead to regain his health and fitness. His movements were sluggish, and his general demeanor was one of low energy, necessitating an increase in activity to shed some excess weight. Once the compassionate rescue workers began showering Teddy with love and care, his initial aloofness began to dissipate. In its place emerged a gentle, affectionate, and somewhat slimmer long-coated sweetheart. Teddy's remarkable story gained widespread attention, amassing a devoted fan base that cheered him on during his fitness journey. Teddy didn't have to wait long for his well-deserved happily ever after. Jesse, a veterinary technician working for the rescue organization, was captivated by his soulful puppy dog eyes. The forces of destiny had ensured that Teddy was found and granted the fairy tale life he had always deserved.